I'd like to welcome our sixth panel, say that again, our sixth panel, Representative Lucas and Representative Beatty from the Committee on Financial Services to the witness table. Representative Lucas, we welcome the summary of your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to testify before you on H.R. 9456, the Protecting American Agriculture from Foreign Adversaries Act. I thank the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse, for sponsoring this legislation, which combines bipartisan legislation, including from myself, to address national security threats posed by foreign investments in the agricultural sector. This bill will officially add the Secretary of Agriculture to the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, a critical step to ensure that agricultural deals are appropriately reviewed. USDA has traditionally included CFIUS deliberations on a case-by-case basis, but I have long argued that we need a statutory requirement so that CFIUS takes advantage of USDA's expertise across all ag-related deals. This includes not only agricultural land sales, but also foreign investment in ag-related biotechnology, storage, and transportation. H.R. 9456 guarantees that the Secretary of Ag will have a seat at the table. The Ag Secretaries under both the Trump and the Biden administration agree that this is a necessary step. In addition to H.R. 9456 creates connective tissue between USDA and CFIUS by requiring CFIUS to examine USDA's referrals of farmland transactions. USDA has long collected data on foreign interest in agricultural real estate. This is an important source of foreign investment data. H.R. 9456 is designed for USDA to refer particularly sensitive transactions captured by the USDA to CFIUS. Then the interagency process must determine whether review is appropriate. These sensitive transactions will focus on farmland purchases tied to the People's Republic of China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea. By targeting our adversaries, we avoid overburdening CFIUS with time-intensive assessments of deals that pose little, if any, national security risk. After all, around 60% of foreign land holdings in the farmland holdings in the United States are tied to just 5 American allies: Canada, the Netherlands, Italy, United Kingdom, and Germany. We want to concentrate on the countries that merit the greatest scrutiny. That's what H.R. 9456 does. This bill is the combination of two pieces of legislation that received unanimous recorded votes as a part of the Financial Services Committee markup last fall. My legislation, the inclusion of the Agricultural Secretary as a CFIUS member, and my colleague from Missouri, Blaine Luetkemeier's legislation, the USDA referral system, both enjoyed unanimous bipartisan support. In addition, very slightly modified versions of these measures were enacted in the FY24 appropriations in March, and I was pleased to see these policies be the law of the land. H.R. 9456 allows us to permanently authorize them rather than rely on annual appropriations process, and as my colleagues know, I serve on both the Financial Services and the Ag Committee. I know that crafting foreign investment policies in the ag sector can be complex. Congress has consistently reaffirmed support for foreign investment in the United States while recognizing that sometimes national security risks must be resolved. This legislation serves both of these interests in a thoughtful way that upholds our economic values while safeguarding the security of the agricultural sector. I again thank the Rules Committee for considering this legislation, and I welcome your questions.
Chair, thanks, the gentleman. The gentlelady, Ms. Beatty, is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Burgess and Ranking Member McGovern. I'm here today to voice a serious concern with H.R. 9456, sponsored by Mr. Newhouse. I serve as ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security, Illicit Finance, and International Financial Institutions, and I can attest that there has been strong bipartisan support for measures from the Financial Services Committee to counter threats to our security from the People's Republic of China. In fact, the House has passed 2 suspension bills on China from our committee just earlier this evening. Moreover, the Financial Services Committee marked up 2 bills that were very similar to H.R. 9456 with a unanimous committee vote, and a version of those two bills became law very recently in March as part of the Consolidated Appropriation Act of 2024, an effort that was led by Representative Ludenmeyer, chair of the National Security Committee. So it is perplexing. Why is this committee is now considering H.R. 9456, which would duplicate what we already passed into law again 6 months ago? This bill backtracks on the bipartisan consensus with language that may appear similar, but in fact significantly changes existing law, hampers our ability to identify national security threats, and exacerbates concerns about racial profiling. I'd like to start by noting my concerns with the process under which this bill is being brought to the floor. The Financial Services Committee, which is the primary committee of jurisdiction, has never marked up this bill. In fact, this bill was only introduced 3 days ago, giving members and staff very little time to analyze the text and receive feedback from Treasury and outside groups. And since there has been no opportunity for the committee to debate on the matter, one would think that the Rules Committee would at least allow for an open amendment process to ensure that members have an opportunity to weigh in. But instead, I understand that this bill will likely be brought to the floor under a closed rule, denying all members the ability to offer amendments. I'd like to confirm if that's accurate or not. Given that we have already passed the law, again, 6 months ago, to cover the concerns surrounding these issues, there is no policy reason that I can see why this would be so urgent. Now, let me explain precisely how this bill differs from what we just passed. Like existing law, this bill would add the Secretary of Agriculture as a member of the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States, or CFIUS, for the purpose of vetting foreign investments related to agriculture. Unlike the law we passed, again, 6 months ago, this bill substantially expands the kinds of transactions that the Secretary of Agriculture would be required to report to CFIUS, to include countless matters that have nothing to do with our national security. Currently, the law is tailored to direct the Secretary of Agriculture to work with the United States Intelligence Committee to identify those transactions that may pose a threat to our national security. Instead, this bill would have the Secretary of Agriculture make determinations as to which transactions pose a threat to our national security without any evidence for such determinations or support from the United States Intelligence Committee to make such a determination. The Secretary of Agriculture, as we know, is not an expert on national security, so without support of the United States intelligence community, they will likely be inclined to simply report all transactions under this bill. Further, unlike the law that was enacted, remind you again, 6 months ago, the bill targets foreign persons, meaning individuals and entities of China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea. This term could be interpreted to include anyone with citizenship in those countries. It could cover people who are here in the United States with green cards or other visas from those countries. And it could even be interpreted to include a company based in, let's say, France or another U.S. ally that happens to have a branch in one of those named countries. This poorly written definition will only result in significantly expanding racial profiling by forcing enhanced scrutiny of people legally in the United States without a shred of evidence that they pose any threat to our national security. This goes against our core values, equal protection, and due process, which are enshrined, as you know, in our Constitution. This bill will tell those ethnic minorities that for them, they are guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around. As the first ever chair of the Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion, which was eliminated by Republicans this Congress, this is yet another alarming move taken by the majority. We've already seen how similar laws in states like Florida have harmed that state's economy and its residents, which makes passing such a policy for the entire United States even more confounding. I agree with the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, the National Iranian American Council, AAPI Hate, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and the Asian American Scholars Forum, who all oppose this bill. With these significant expansions to the kinds of transactions that the Secretary of Agriculture would have to report to CFIUS, the bill then requires CFIUS to review every report without the benefit of the extensive information that is typically found in CFIUS filings. This would inevitably overwhelm CFIUS with countless transactions to review, the vast majority of which have nothing to do with our national security. This bill is supposedly about national security, but it is effectively removing the national security nexus that is currently required for reporting. Notably, H.R. 9456 does not provide any new resources for either USDA or CFIUS to review these transactions. Both the USDA and CFIUS would be forced to redirect already limited resources to conduct pointless reviews, ultimately making it harder for them to actually identify real threats of our national security. Finally, I will note that because this bill adds language rather than amending existing law, it creates confusion and uncertainty as how these duplicative and conflicting provisions should be interpreted. It will undoubtedly generate legal challenges that will further tie up resources of CFIUS as well as the Department of Agriculture as they struggle to understand what their legal obligations are. Notably, this bill will make it easier for adversarial countries to thwart the efforts of CFIUS to protect our national security. These concerns and others have been raised by the Treasury Department, which worked closely, collaboratively, and successfully with Congress to tailor the language of the March 2024 law. Treasury also seems perplexed, as we are, that the issue is in front of us again. They also asked for changes to the bill text. Unfortunately, House Republican leadership is not interested in their substantive concerns and plans to advance this text bill without committee debate or opportunity for it to be amended. I implore this committee to put our national security first, not harm the good work that we've already done earlier this year, and reject H.R. 9456. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back the chair. Thanks, gentlelady. Gentleman from Oklahoma, I would just ask you if there's anything you have to offer in response.
Oh, my goodness, I thought I just heard a presentation on the merits and the dismerits of the Farm Bill. We could tempt it, Mr. Chairman, at humor. The bottom line on this bill is, how do we address the issue of foreign enterprises, many times dominated by foreign governments or organized crime in other countries, trying to acquire critical pieces of agricultural resources in this country, whether it's production land, processing, distribution, our food supply. I started work on this issue in 2018, and I couldn't get anybody's attention. Who cared? Until the Chinese started trying to buy farmland around military bases. And all of a sudden, people came alive. But it's more than just that. It is using these kind of resources to acquire our core production capacities in this country. In Oklahoma, it was organized crime from those countries buying up resources to produce marijuana, perhaps not legally. In the Midwest, it was these resources trying to acquire the best farmland. Because if you own the farmland, then you can send the beans and corn wherever you want them to go. Or acquiring the feeding, processing, distribution systems for the food supply here in the United States. All legitimate issues. When Secretary Perdue and Secretary Vilsack discussed this, they understood and understand the importance of protecting this critical issue. Now, I know CFIUS was created in the 70s in the spirit of protecting our rocket factories and our military-related technology, our communications, all of those kind of things that affect national security. But I would argue if you can't feed yourself, that is the most important national security issue to be addressed. Why are we here with this bill by Mr. Newhouse? It's because even though the issues were addressed as a part of the appropriations process, it was felt by many of us that we needed to put certainty, not just continue this process of tacking stuff on appropriations bills every cycle, every year, but permanent law. I think we did a good job. I think Mr. Newhouse did a good job. Now, if you believe that looking over the shoulders of people who are potentially bad actors, who might threaten our survival as a nation, then I guess you don't like these kind of pieces of legislation. But as for me, it's been against the law for foreign entities to own farmland in Oklahoma for decades and decades and decades. This process will help my state authorities figure out who's violating that law and take action in Oklahoma. Again, I thank the Rules Committee for the opportunity to be here to discuss an issue that I think is critically important, to talk about making a provision of law that was passed as part of the appropriations process permanent, because it needs to be done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank both of you for being here. I'll yield to the ranking member.
Well, did you want to respond?
Let me just very briefly, I know the hour is late, but let me just say, and I certainly appreciate the comments from my colleague who mentioned he served on agriculture as well as financial services. It falls within Lutenmeyer and my subcommittee, which he does not serve on. But the most important thing, it wasn't marked up by agriculture either. And so I think when it's not marked up by agriculture, financial services, or even foreign affairs, we could have also codified the March language. When you look at this, it makes no sense. We spent a lot of time, and we always talk about working together. It passed in the markup unanimously out of the appropriate committee with the language. Then it actually, bipartisan, passed, went to the president, got signed into law. This makes no sense to come back 6 months later with this.
Well, let me just say, I welcome you both here at this late hour. And Mr. Lucas, I have too much respect for you to kind of say all the things that I want to say here today about the process. I mean, I don't even know, I mean, the deal is, last minute introduction, no markup, here we are before rules, you're going to testify, and odds are there's going to be no opportunity for people to amend any of this stuff. So it is what it is. It's China Week, so everything had to be rushed in to fit into this category. And as a result, legislation that really could be truly bipartisan has become very partisan. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's intentional. We just voted on a Biosecure Act that is so poorly drafted. Even I think my Republican friends will realize, if it ever becomes law, just what a slippery slope you just went down on that bill. But whatever, it is what it is. I don't want to belabor the point. I want to get this over with. I'll yield back.
Chair thanks the gentleman for his very thoughtful remarks. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to say, Mr. Lucas, thank you for bringing it forward. I appreciate it. I'm from a ag district, and we see the concerns that are being addressed here. And you are absolutely right that food security is national security. And I think part of that, we even saw, you said in 2018 talking about this, but we saw what happened during the COVID lockdowns. And so thank you for bringing it forward. It's something that we truly do need to address. So thank you. I yield back.
Chair thanks, gentlelady. Gentlelady yields back to gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized for questions.
Thank you so much, and hello. I just heard both of you talking about a similar concern, that it's important that we prevent adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party and or their corporate subsidiaries from gaining ownership of important American assets that are essential to our national security. Is that right? That's what your concerns are, is right? So I guess, Representative Lucas, what I wonder about is our inconsistency in that, and the Republican inconsistency in that. That our adversaries can mine our rare earth and precious minerals that are important for computing and other high security needs here in America. They can come in and mine those, and they don't have to pay a dime. And because I don't want our adversaries to have that kind of access to important national security assets, I presented an amendment to say we should not allow that to happen. And every Republican on this committee, and then most Republicans, not all, voted that down. We got 8 Republicans willing to say that's not right, and they did a motion to recommit. So I think that those are the kinds of things that, why can't we do something that simple that actually gives away, not investing, giving away our natural resources, giving away our mineral resources to our adversaries. And yet, we're here with this bill that, as Representative Beatty pointed out, has lots of flaws. There's already something in the law that addresses this. And so that's what's frustrating, is that there is such inconsistency with regards to this. And with that, I'll yield back, and so we can move on, because we've got a rule to pass that will not allow much amendment. Was there anything you wanted to add, Representative Beatty?
I would just simply note that I appreciate the good lady's points, that this is an area that I've worked on because of my committee experience and my experience back home in my great state. I don't disagree for a moment that there are many issues in many areas that have to be addressed. But I've been here long enough to know that I work within the system as it exists, whether I always appreciate it as both being in the political minority or the political majority, and I've served in both.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank
You did vote against that motion to recommit. When we actually passed it, we got 8 votes. And thank you very much
Noted.
for your concern. And with that, I yield back.
Chair thanks, gentlelady. Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for questions. I have no questions, Mr. Chairman. No questions from Kentucky. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend Mr. Lucas for bringing this, and I think it's important that we understand that our adversaries want to take over our cropland, and we need to do anything and everything we can to stop it. I've encouraged my state legislature to take up issues. I think Arkansas is probably, of the states, done the best job of that. But appreciate you doing it, and also like to see no more solar panels on our farmland either, Mr. Chairman.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Does the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, gentlelady, have any questions? No questions from Pennsylvania. Seeing no other members wishing to ask questions, I want to thank the members for their testimony. This panel is excused.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.